Thank you so much for joining me again for another iteration of Data4God. Today, I have the absolute pleasure of actually talking to one of my former students, Katherine Grimshaw. Katherine, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Sure thing. Absolute pleasure. So, some interesting things about Katherine. She has lived in 4 different states, but she's been in Raleigh so long she considers Raleigh her home, but much the same for me, actually. She attended NC State University for undergrad, where she graduated summa cum laude with a major in applied math and minors in economics and statistics. Apparently, she was really busy. So during her time in undergrad, Katherine worked part-time as a federal employee at the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. I had to practice that one a few times. Katherine also traveled to California and was part of an undergrad research team studying abstract algebra, whose findings were published in a mathematical forum. Now, she did go on to graduate school at the Institute for Advanced Analytics, and after getting her Master of Science in Analytics, she was hired by SAS as an analytical consultant. During her time at SAS, she worked on a dozen projects that spanned a variety of areas, including tax fraud, banking, healthcare, and state government. But after 5 years at SAS and in the middle of a COVID pandemic, Katherine decided it was the opportune time to switch careers and left SAS to go work full-time at a teaching position at Wake Tech Community College in their business analytics department. So, Katherine, thank you so much again for joining me here.
So I'm excited to be here.
Now, I know a little bit more about your story being a former student of mine, but tell the audience a little bit about your experience at that research, that research experience you had in California, and how God used that actually to change your career path.
Sure. Yes, it was a very interesting story of how God used that project, but it was between my junior and senior year, and I was picked for this undergraduate research project. It was funded through the National Science Foundation, and it was at a college in California, Chico University.
Nice.
And we were tasked with studying abstract algebra research for 6 weeks, the project was. And so I'm very excited. This was something I wanted to do after I graduated. So I was very excited to have this opportunity. And I went out there. I loved California. I loved the team I worked with, but I found I hated abstract algebra. Abstract algebra, when you go to the farthest limits of what anyone's ever thought of for abstract math, it gets really, really weird. And this was not something I personally enjoyed at all. And this really devastated me because that was my plan. And I was going to be entering senior year of college. And I was like, well, it's a little late to be changing majors at this point. And that was what I wanted to do after graduation. But God kind of used it because in the middle of kind of that devastation point, one of the other guys on a different project team, he was actually from California, was asking me, what was it like to live in North Carolina? And I was thinking, why do you even care if you're from California? And it was because he was interested in attending NC State's IA program. And I got thinking, if somebody in California knows about this program, maybe I should look more into it. I heard about it because I was going to undergrad at NC State, so I heard rumors about it, but I all of a sudden gave it a whole nother look when other people from other states had heard about it. And really God used this to kind of show me what was in my own backyard. So it took me going all the way to the West Coast to find out what was at the current college I was attending to. And so that's really how I ended up learning about the IA and digging into it, applying, and the rest is history.
Oh, that is awesome. Well, hey, just remember, Jonah had a similar experience, but you didn't have to live in a fish for 3 days. So it's okay, right? You just had to go to California. So in the end.
Right. There's worse things.
Exactly. That is a really cool story. So you obviously have a good attitude about faith to look back and see God had a plan for you during that time. Tell us a little bit about your journey of faith.
Sure. So I grew up in a Christian home. Both my parents are Christians. And so I really accepted Jesus into my heart when I was age 6. I looked it up. It was age 6 and I was baptized a little while later. And so, kind of thinking back on kind of this journey of faith, I've had a lot of different milestones in my life. And one big one that I remember that still kind of hits me to this day was being a senior in high school and hearing my youth pastor really pose this question to us of, what would you do if there were no consequences to your actions and if no one ever found out? And up until that point, I have been the really goody two-shoes kid, always doing the right thing. And I realized that was really all people-pleasing. And if no one ever found out, the sky was the limit. And I realized just at that time, and even to this day, like really how dark our hearts really are.
Yeah.
And that's, kind of reminded me what grace is.
Yeah.
And so I think that was a big kind of turning point in my life, because up until then, I didn't really remember a time when I wasn't a Christian, but kind of seeing, God's grace and God's love through a whole nother eye set was a really big moment of me. So I've had different milestones like that just growing in the faith. But that was a major big one that I can think of.
That's awesome. See, I love those stories. Everyone always wants sort of that Saul to Paul kind of like moment in life, but the stories of continued faith throughout life, we need just as many Elijahs as we do Sauls and Pauls, right? And so like it's something that, that's always encouraging to me. I came to faith later in life, but trying to raise 2 children to try and grow them up in the faith, it's encouraging to see other people who are able to grow up in the faith and continue that faith forward. That's an awesome story. So some people seem surprised when I tell them I'm a Christian and I work with data and math, especially in academia. Do you have any experiences that are like that?
I really haven't.
That's great.
Yes, I really haven't had that. I think, what really got me excited about this video series was kind of hearing other people's stories and those who have kind of gone before and had those experiences. I personally have never hidden away from the Bible and science. That was something that's always been kind of part of my heritage. My dad actually became a Christian when he was in grad school through science. And so I think that has always just been kind of something that I've always dug into and never shied away from. But no, I haven't really had those experiences.
That's cool though. All right, now tell me a little bit about this story of your dad finding God through science. That is just really cool.
Right. It was, and up until then, he had grown up sort of in the church, but he had never really heard the message of salvation. He was a leader in youth group, and yet that was not something that, was even mentioned. And so, but really, coming in grad school and starting to study, we're a very math and science family, both my parents are. And so that was really, kind of discovering this is the creator of the universe, and seeing all that design and stuff that God has really put into there is really what led him to the faith.
That is so awesome. That is so awesome. Cool deal. Well, all right. So a follow-up to that last question. How do you connect God to the idea of just sort of data and math in general?
That is a good question. I think, I'm thinking kind of back to God's design and how much that really this is God's world, and a lot of this data has always existed, but we're finally at that point in history where we can start collecting some of it. And so I think the kind of the discovery part of that, in order to, now we can start seeing things that God always had there, but we can actually start measuring them and, starting to do predictions and things like that. I think just the kind of investigation piece that we have with data really just points to that there was a designer at the beginning and still is. So. Yep. No,
that's so true. It's one of those things, right? So many people think that God and science are opposites of each other. And it's like, no, God is the God of science too. Yes. Science allows us to sort of unpack the world a little bit and see the amazing things, like you said, that God has already sort of given us and done.
Exactly, right. From the smallest thing to the giant galaxies, there's so much detailed design in every area of creation.
Exactly. Okay, so there are a lot of great Christian organizations and churches out there, but God calls us to represent him wherever he calls us to be. So how do you connect your faith with your career, especially one in academia?
It really, as you said, God needs Christians in every sphere. And so in every industry and every sector, but I feel very privileged right now and honored that I get to have this job where I directly have impact into students' lives as a teacher. And kind of thinking of what that means of, bringing Christ's light to that. And I think a couple big things that come to my mind are really humility coming into that, and also just empathy. And with the humility piece, I like to tell the story to students of how I personally have messed up code. Specifically, a good one is on my very first project. I coded an infinite loop on the project. And yes, it was a side note. I created a macro that within the macro, it called itself. So it kept calling itself and calling itself. And it was very entertaining and terrifying at the time. And we had to call somebody to kill it because it would have crashed the server. but telling students stories like these where, my failure with code, especially because the kind of makeup of my students, a lot of my students have never coded before. This is the closest they've ever gotten to a computer coding. But then I also have students who are computer science majors taking my courses. But those students who aren't used to getting error messages and are scared to hit run. And so giving these stories of examples, I think really helps the students then to come to me in office hours or after class with errors that they're having, because they feel, you're not perfect, I'm not perfect, like let's figure out this code together. And so that's always a big piece, I think, of teaching. And then the second one I would say is empathy. And especially at the community college level, students are just so busy. They pretty much all are working full-time jobs, sometimes multiple jobs, and they have families, they have kids that they're dealing with and all these family struggles. And so being able to kind of design courses so that students can succeed, giving them the weekends to work on things and stuff like that, and really pulling together kind of exciting things about data science to inspire them to want to go into this field, no matter what industry they're interested in. I've done some stuff with like sports analytics, but then I brought in some videos from like Disney and how they're using analytics. So trying to get like all the different sectors and industries in there. So overall, definitely faith, incorporating that kind of into how I'm teaching and how I design things.
That is so cool. Like you said, I think the thing that most people think of when they think of like instructors and teachers is that we are these robots that know all the answers. And like the biggest
at a high level, yes.
Exactly, right? I think the best words that any academia or professor or teacher can know is "I don't know." Because I think that humanizes you a little bit, right? It's like, there are answers I don't know the answer to. We can work through it together and figure it out, but I don't know it all.
Exactly.
Cool. So what is one big blessing you've had in your career due to your faith?
I'd say that just really that God had a plan in all of this, kind of thinking back of that California project and how I was so focused and really, really wanted to do this, but how God really knew me better than I knew myself. When I was a kid, I was extremely shy, and I've slowly become a little bit more outgoing, but I enjoy really hanging out with people now and talking with people, and how that career of abstract algebra research would not have fit my personality now. So really God knew what he was doing and kind of this whole plan. And I think even the job at the EEOC and working there, and how it wasn't math related at all, but how much I really enjoyed just working with people, and how that was a foreshadow of a data science career, and now even teaching really that one-on-one time with students. So I think it's just been kind of this full circle. And even now I'm in charge of the 2 SAS programming classes at Wake Tech. And by working at SAS at the time, I've had so much experience in it. So all in all, God had this great plan that I couldn't see coming. And still, who knows what's around the corner.
That's awesome. And if I remember correctly about your story, you used to actually attend Wake Tech at some point. So like it truly has come full circle.
That is true. Yes, I took classes at Wake Tech when I was in high school. So I was like exactly, and I love telling the students that, because I was like, I was where you are right now. And yes, it really, truly has come full circle.
That is so cool. So outside of your career, I know you've done some amazing things, from volunteering to help spread the love of Christ. Can you tell me about some of these things?
Sure. One group I've really enjoyed volunteering with is it's called Refugee Hope Partners. And so this is a group out in North Raleigh that really exists to really honor and serve the refugees in our community by showing them the love of Christ. And I've personally enjoyed tutoring with this group. So they do lots of different tutoring for elementary, middle, and high school. And so I've worked with that high school and college age and getting to tutor them in mathematics or other subjects that they might be struggling with. And that's just really been, an eye-opening experience for me. I've never lived outside the United States, and I can't even imagine coming into a culture where you don't even know the language. And English is such a hard language to learn. And a lot of these students, even if they are age, going into high school and not knowing English and not being able to understand their classes, and then seeing them succeed and grow and eventually graduating and going off to college or other jobs in the area. It's just been truly a rewarding experience for me, and also being able to help these students.
That is so awesome. That you aren't kidding about the English being a hard language with two little ones at home, right? Like, I can't tell you how many times a 6-year-old goes, "But that doesn't follow the blah 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 rule." I'm like, "Buddy, I'm sorry. The English language is horrible. Like, none of it follows any rules. Like, I'm sorry. I don't even know why they have them. Like, it's just no point." So you're exactly right. Like, coming from another culture and coming in to try and learn our language, try and just adapt to our culture is a tough thing to do. So it's amazing work that you guys are doing. That's great.
Yes, like I said, I can't even imagine trying to. I don't know how to spell everything, and I've lived here my whole life. So
Exactly.
yes.
Exactly. So, what are some things we can pray for you about as we wrap up this interview?
I'd say just really ongoing, discernment and wisdom. I, as we said before, I'm really new to this teaching gig. I started last year in the middle of COVID, and truly this semester has been the first time that I had like an in-person class, really for the whole semester. And there's just a lot I have to learn. And so I think just kind of wisdom in that, and then also just discernment of how, to talk with students, engage with them, both in the classroom and in office hours and other things online, just for that kind of knowledge and wisdom going forward that really can represent Christ well.
Definitely. No, that's a great thing to pray about. Definitely a great thing to pray about. Perfect. Well, Katherine, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure catching up with you again and seeing you again. And, God bless you in your teaching and everything you do. Teachers are an amazing group of people that have a tough task always in front of them. So I always appreciate other fellow instructors. So thank you so much for coming out and speaking with me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Sure thing, sure thing. And thank you all at home for watching again on Data4God. Look out for our next installation of the Data4God interview series. Take care and God bless.